Welcome to the Weird Warriors podcast. I'm Max.
I'm Rich.
And on this podcast, we will be focusing on the Weird War Tales comic published by DC Comics from 1971 to 1983. On this episode, we are taking a look at Weird War Tales number 4.
March, April 1972. The fourth scalp-tingling issue. Because, you know, it's scalp-tingling.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, pulse pounding, and right there, they're going for that. They're going for that Stan Lee, Marvel Comics bombast, and that scalp tingling's pretty good. Gut grabbing was my favorite last issue. That was worthy right there. I love.
I can't wait to see what the fourth issue of Weird War is going to be all excited over.
Yeah, exactly. So on this cover, well, once again, we got 52 big pages, don't take less, for only 25 cents. We got the Weird War awesome logo, one of my favorite logos in all of comics. It's just timeless. I love it. The gravestone DC Weird War Tales icon. And then we have, as usual, an awesome illustration by Joe Kubert. I'll let you describe that to the listeners.
Yeah, it's an old man in a U.S. Army uniform kneeling in front of a robed figure that is pouring the sand of an hourglass onto the ground in front of him. And this is an old dude, the wrinkles, the teeth missing, the sunken eyes, the gray hair, and he's surrounded with the detritus of battle. And he's all, who are you? What have you done to me? I've grown old. And Joe Kubert does what Joe Kubert does. This is a old dude. This guy's looks like he's probably in his 80s if he's a day, if not even longer, if not even older than that. So Kubert killing it as usual. I would hop into my my Killjoy was here moment right here on the cover, because the name tapes on the uniform are on the wrong side. The U.S. Army should be over your heart because you love the Army.
That is a real thing, isn't it?
I would not doubt that is why U.S. Army, well, actually any branch, is over the heart. I wouldn't doubt that for a second. That's probably
okay. So no one actually said that to you in your history of studying or being in the Army.
I've probably heard it once or twice.
All right. Okay.
I couldn't remember specifics. But...
and they call comic books corny. Oh man! So my favorite touch on this cover, again, like you said, we just, as they say, wax Joe Kubert's car every day, every time we talk about the guy, and he deserves it. But my favorite touch on this cover, since we got to get a little picky and zero in on some elements here, I like this robed figure that's standing before the apparently prematurely aged soldier and is just dumping out an hourglass of sand very casually, like she doesn't even care where it's falling. It looks like a woman's hand in the robe.
Next to you.
Yeah, it just doesn't even, she doesn't even care where the sand is falling. It's just piling up on his leg. And I get the feeling, we can't see her face, but I get the feeling she's looking away towards the next thing she's going to do. The body language is like, you're just, collateral damage. I don't care about you. And all that from just part of a figure. And, is what I like about Kubert's art here, is just a testament to his ability to tell a story with a single illustration. I love it.
That's what he does. So before we actually lunge into the issue, though, there was a couple of things that we did a little bit of research on from the last issue.
Oh yeah, we should have done this first.
Well, it doesn't matter. Just like we can do the cover detail first, then we can go, oh yeah, by the way, last issue.
Yeah, so we're going to do a new segment when appropriate in every show called Retroactive History, where we fix the screw-ups, probably mine, from our previous episode, and then get on with business. Or like this time, we're going to do it after we get on with business. So Rich, take it away. Okay, well, one thing I've mentioned before in some of the issues that we've already gone through, the B-17 stories, that I had an uncle that flew 32 missions in a flying fortress over Europe to Italy during World War II. And I've talked about him a little bit, but the last issue, issue number 3, started with a TBM Avenger ditching at sea.
And I felt I would be very remiss if I didn't mention another uncle of mine, Joseph Jewell, Lieutenant JG, who flew Avengers with VT-10 and then later on VTN-90 off of CV-6, the original USS Enterprise.
Oh, now you have my attention.
And
of course, you had it the whole time, but
he flew two cruises. The Avenger was a torpedo bomber, but his squadron commander hated the torpedoes that we carried back then. So almost every mission that they flew, they were loaded with bombs. And yeah, he sank one Japanese ship, crippled another one for the surface units to pick off. He was on board the Enterprise when a kamikaze came zipping out of some low clouds and slammed into the flight deck and exploded. There's this picture, you can find it online really, really easily, of there's the Enterprise is at sea and there's this mountainous column of smoke boiling up out of the flight deck, and the flight elevator is on top of the column of smoke. That flight elevator weighs hundreds of tons and it's about 1,000 feet up in the air. Yeah, so that thing went whoop, and then the guy that was at the con looked up, saw that, he just moved the ship's wheel. So when they came back down, the elevator hit the ocean instead of hitting the ship. But my uncle, at this point in the war, the Enterprise was on night missions, VTN-90, when that N stood for night. And so this was during the day, so my uncle wasn't on a mission at the time. So he was on board when the kamikaze hit. He got bounced around, his cabin pretty badly, and picked up some shrapnel. So he got a Purple Heart out of it. And that strike actually ended the career of the Enterprise. That was like May of '45. By the time they got it back home, got it patched up and everything else like that, the war was over. So
minus a flight tower that they dodged so it could sink into the ocean. My God.
So so I got a whole bunch of his stories out of him too. But I just felt like I'd be remiss if I mentioned my one uncle. I really felt like I needed to pass honors on to the other one. So there's that, and the other one was, we did a little bit of research because we were talking about the Seaweed Man.
Yes.
From Weird War 3. We were making comments about which one predated the other one, Seaweed Man or Swamp Thing. And Swamp Thing first appeared in July of 1971 in House of Mystery. So it does slightly predate. I think it was by 6 months or something like that. I think it's about the same time period.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, the way that these things happen is you're never sure who wrote the stuff, who came up with it first, who was talking to who, because Swamp Thing is also tied in with a little back and forth with Len Wein and a few other creators who were roommates at the time. And one of them went off and created Swamp Thing, and the other went off and created Man Thing for Marvel. Both swamp creatures that were supposedly born from the death of a scientist in the swamp who, they were on fire and chemicals, and they rose and, became these muck monsters. And then you have this Seaweed Man too, that it's a good 6 months before. So odds are Kubert just drew this seaweed monster. And then there's the Heap, which was a swamp monster in the 40s, which I'm sure Kubert knew about. But it is cool to just see the cross-pollination of all these things. And I should mention, now you bring up the debut of Swamp Thing and House of Mystery, that I believe the cover model who posed for the drawing of there's a woman combing her hair. I remember this cover pretty vividly. And the Swamp Thing is coming up behind her, and that woman is Louise Jones, who would later become Louise Simonson, married to Walt Simonson. And so they all posed for each other a lot back in the day, to get poses right and to get faces right and stuff like that,
Be a live model.
So yeah, it's just a little bit of comic book trivia, because I don't have a cool war story like you did with amazing heroics. I mean, I was once thrown up in the air off a jet ski that I didn't know how to turn, and it did bob in the water, so I missed it on the way down. So it's very similar. Very similar story, but that's about as close as I'm going to get to any tales of valor in real life here. So that's why we have you here, man. So the show will have some relevant content.
Some exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'll have a bunch of, stupid comic book trivia, which is terribly important to me. But speaking of comic books, we've talked about the cover of this one. We're going to open that cover and get to the framing story, which I think you have titled Gypsy Girl, because that's probably the only title out there for it. As usual, the framing sequence for Weird War Tales to this point is all written and drawn by Joe, living legend. Well, not living anymore. Joe, the legend Kubert. And the synopsis for this part of the framing sequence is we've got two GIs, Tony and Johnny, are caught in an artillery barrage. Tony is wounded in the leg, and Johnny leaves to get help. A thick fog rolls in, and a band of gypsies arrives, led by a beautiful woman. The soldier is given tea and wishes it was 20 years from now. The woman admonishes him and starts to tell him tales of men that fought in different times and different wars. So that's the synopsis. I would just, first thing I'm going to add, we don't have a Killjoy was here, but I'm going to add like a, something that, you're reading old comics, so things just kind of twinge you when you're reading them later on in history. The whole gypsies thing. It just gave me a little pang, reading that, knowing how opinions have changed, and how portrayals have changed over time. There's nothing overtly terrible in this portrayal, I don't think, but I was still like, oh God, it's gypsies in an old comic book. What is about to happen? But thankfully, nothing too terrible as yet. So in lieu of Killjoy was here, I'll come up with a name for that segment in a future episode. But stuff like that's going to happen when you're reading old comics.
Well, you got to remember, if Joe Kubert wrote and drew this section, Kubert was Jewish, so he would probably have sympathies towards a lot of the European. I don't know what the hell the word is I'm looking for here.
The Romani?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I would
think
see
so, but then you have the Will Eisner phenomenon of like Will was Jewish and was very, very obviously against anti-Semitism, but then he had the character Ebony White in Spirit, which is one of the most horrible racist characters you'll ever see in print. And he talked about that in great detail later in his life. I mean, he didn't go to his grave defending that by any means, but still, like, blinders can be on. Even if you're a part of a group that's persecuted, you can still go ahead and just be racist to everybody else. We're all human. But not to belabor it, but I when I saw it was a band of gypsies, I was like, oh God, here we go. But it ended up being fine. So since it was fine, and and it obviously has great Joe Kubert art, let's talk about our commendations for this first part of the framing sequence. Take it away.
Okay. Well, the first three panels on the top half of page 1. I'm sorry, I can easily imagine Rod Serling doing the voiceover for this. It's like, in a world war, the lives of millions are involved. Soldiers, faceless men with no past, present, or future. But the impact of war is distant and impersonal because of the numbers involved. Concentrate on only 2 men. People like yourself. They think as you do, feel as you do, dream as you do. I'm reading this. I'm like, where's Rod?
Yeah, it's almost written in that cadence. I mean, you reading it in that cadence draws it out, but it fits perfectly. And we're gonna have to find excuses for you to be Rod Serling in as many episodes as possible. Because I'm just enjoying the heck out of that. But obviously Twilight Zone was a thing. It was huge before this comic came out. So I can see some of that leaking into Joe and just him writing in that, in that rhythm without even realizing it, or maybe on purpose. But it does fit. I'm going to read so many of these captions in that voice as we go forward.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's great. For me, it's the last panel of this framing sequence. It comes from when the soldier is wishing it was 20 years from now so he could get past this damn war, and the woman's admonishing him and telling him, kind of be careful what you wish for, sort of thing. She says, for time is like an endless circle. And it leads right into this panel, the last panel in the framing sequence, where a biplane is flying right across her face. And that biplane, it's a tight close-up of her face, and there's a plane just just surreally flying across it. And that leads right into the first story. Like there's a level, as I've said in previous episodes, the level of coordination between the framing sequences and the content is getting better and better and tighter. And here it's like at an apex where literally a piece of the story they're about to tell is entering the panel of the framing sequence and flying across her face. So that leads us directly into the first story.
Oh, quite literally. I mean, this is the first time that we've done this where like the top 2/3 of the page is the framing sequence. In this case, Joe Kubert's art. And the bottom third, it just boom, it jumps right into Irv Novick's art for the next story. And it's kind of weird because the 2 panels that they choose to drop right here are in the story, but like 3 pages into the story. It's kind of weird, you know, the way they just chose to lift those 2 panels instead of, I don't know, 2 other panels. But the story that we blend into immediately was originally called The Ghost Ship of 2 Wars. It never mentions the title in the Weird Wars tale. In the original, it was a 3-part battle tale. Reprint. It was a reprinted.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Yeah, it was a reprinted cover story. You know, that Russ Heath did the cover art on. It was from All American Men of War '81 from September of 1960. This is 16 pages. This is the longest story that we've covered so far in one of these podcasts. Bob Kanigher wrote it, and as I've already mentioned, Irv Novick did the art. And the synopsis is there's these 3 brothers, the 3 musketeers. Bill and Steve, they always look after Mickey in childhood fights, sports, and getting a date. They're assigned to the same fighter squadron in France in World War I. They get jumped by an enemy squadron led by the Black Ace, who flies with a fixed death head's grin in a black and white albatross. Mickey's getting shot up until Bill flies between the 2 planes and gets himself shot down and killed. The same thing soon happens to Steve also, and Steve vows, "I'll get you," to the enemy pilot through tear-filled eyes. Time goes by, and Mickey runs up his score searching for the Black Ace, who, of course, finds him first. Thrown out of the cockpit in the fierce maneuvering to escape the Germans' guns, his Spad levels off as it flies into a cloud. Mickey parachutes into it as well, screaming at the Black Ace, "I'll come after you, no matter where I am!" Falling out of the cloud, a flight of World War II P-51s roar by, and Mickey is all like, "What? What are those? Am I dreaming?" He's knocked out on landing, and when he wakes up in a military hospital surrounded by medical personnel, wondering why he's wearing a World War I uniform. Mickey sees a calendar on a table with 1944 on it, and I can't tell them the truth. They'll think I'm nuts. They'll lock me up. He figures the cloud had something to do with it, and he laments the fact that the Black Ace is now out of his reach forever. The airfield suddenly comes under enemy air attack, led by a Messerschmitt with the same paint scheme as the Black Ace. Mickey grabs a chute from a killed pilot and scrambles to get into the fight, but all the Mustangs are wrecked. He's chased into the woods by the medical personnel, and he finds, ta-da! His Spad waiting for him, magically landed all by itself. He climbs in and takes off over the heads of the medics who are all, "What the heck?"
This guy takes his recreation hobby seriously.
Mickey gets max altitude and dives on the Messerschmitt. Its pilot sporting the same death head grin as his World War I counterpart. Messerschmitt opens fire out of the range of the Spad's guns and shoots off the Spad's wings. Mickey opens up at close range, avenging his brothers, and the 2 planes collide head-on. Mickey is thrown clear, shoots through the clouds, and returns to World War I to see the wreckage of 2 planes below. One is his Spad, and the other is the World War I Black Aces. Congratulated by his squadron, he mulls the truth silently. He's like, probably like, what, is there going to be like another war in 27 years? So, like I said, that was a 3-part story. It was the longest one we've done so far. It's a pretty good story. They hopped into it kind of fast. They skipped 2 whole pages in the original that they just didn't do in the reprint for some odd reason.
Yeah, we missing anything there? Like, because I did feel it was kind of abrupt, but
nah. Not really. I mean, it's the dramatic, you know, the World War II Black Ace is looking through his windscreen at the Spad, zooming in on him. He's like, "Himmel, is this a ghost ship? Or really an Amerikaner fool attacking my Messerschmitt with a World War I Spad?" And the whole first page that they eliminate is, you know, Mickey in his chute heading down into the clouds, and the World War I Black Ace is zooming on him and shooting at him with his guns, trying to kill him. And he disappears into the clouds before he can actually get him. And then it jumps into the whole Mickey and his brothers, the Three Musketeers, and everything else. But just the one little killjoy was here moment. I said about parachutes last episode.
I do.
Yeah, no, they didn't have parachutes, which would really eliminate a good chunk of the story, not having parachutes. But
see, because of all the time travel, they had to disallow parachutes because the space-time continuum was tearing itself to pieces.
There was one quote I thought of when I was reading the story. I thought I would bring up here. Kiffin Rockwell was in the Lafayette Escadrille. That was a squadron of American fighter pilots that were flying for France in World War I before the United States was involved in the war. And he was the first American to shoot down an enemy plane. And he is quoted as saying, "Elijah was reputed to be the patron saint of aviators. But as he went to heaven in a chariot of fire, this was something we weren't too keen about." And as you could almost predict it, he was killed in action in September of 1916, which was still before the United States was involved in the war. So yeah,
be careful what you say about Elijah.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I told you. I mean, like the life expectancy of these guys was appallingly brief.
Yeah, and he didn't have a time traveling parachute. So
yeah. So, but yeah, commendations. Yeah, Novick does a good job. Spads are spads. The World War II parachute that Mickey grabs as he's scrambling through the flat line actually has U.S. Army Air Force, detail imprinted on it. I can give Novick the nod for his attention to detail.
Oh, yeah, Novick's art is unassailable in general, in my opinion, especially seeing his work in these issues pop up. But really good here, especially considering I could not wait for this story to be over. Like, my first commendation has to be your synopsis, because you made this story sound so much snappier and better paced than it is. Like, I know it's a 3-part battle tale, but man, it felt like it was 57 pages long. Like, Bob Kanigher just did not know how to pace a story. Thank goodness he had Irv Novick there to provide what is one of the coolest panels I've seen in any of these issues is in this story, the one you described of the wingless biplane. It had its wing shot off by the World War II enemy. And it's the World War I soldier is just like, to heck with it. I'm flying this wingless plane straight at you and firing full bore. Like, that is just an incredibly kick-ass panel. And near the end of a really badly paced story. So Novick just saved it in the end for me. That is just one of the coolest things I've seen in a war comic.
So from there, we move on to our second story. I'll let you do this one because I know you're jonesing all over this one. It's originally, it was called, in Weird War, it's called Time Warp. It's the reprinted cover story. Russ Heath again from Star Spangled War Stories 123 from October of 1965. It was originally titled The Dinosaur Who Ate Torpedoes, and it's our first foray into the war that time forgot. Bob Kanigher and Gene Colan do the honors here, and I will let Max take it away.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say the first title, the original title, is so much better. How do you give up The Dinosaur Who Ate Torpedoes and just call it Time Warp? I mean, we had a time warp in the previous story. That would have been more appropriate, But The Dinosaur Who Ate Torpedoes is still the title of this story as far as I'm concerned. And Bob Kanigher writes this one, as you mentioned, and he doesn't do a much better job. At least it's snappier. But this story, it makes no damn sense, even considering it's a story with dinosaurs fighting modern day soldiers in it. But we have the art of Gene Colan. We have a great original title. And as you were leading me into, the synopsis is, we have a new super accurate bomb site being lost at sea, and frogmen in 3 PT boats are sent to recover it or destroy it before it falls into enemy hands. At the site of the wreck, the boats fire on an enemy sub, only to watch their torpedoes get intercepted and swallowed by a gigantic dinosaur. 2 more dinos show up out of the blue, and eventually, the bomb site and the TNT meant to destroy it are swallowed by the torpedo muncher, and boom, the dinosaur dies in the end. And it's a short little story where you have soldiers going off to recover something. A bunch of monsters show up literally out of nowhere. And then by the end, everything's destroyed. The dinosaurs are dead. And pretty much the reset button has been hit. And
two of the PT boats have been eaten, wrecked, destroyed by the dinosaurs. So there's only the one boat left.
Oh yeah, this thing eats torpedoes. They eat, they eat ships. There's a incredibly huge pterosaur or pterodactyl like monster that eats an entire plane, or at least bites it in half. Does he bite the boat in half?
Yep, it flies in, swoops up the. Flies off with it, which leads to the incredibly dramatic panel. As he's being carried off, one of the guys on the radio on that boat's like, "Guess you'll have to carry on the mission without us. Good luck." Which is my commendation, actually. That panel is like,
yeah, it's just so it's like something from the worst old dinosaur movie you've ever seen. Because this thing, the pterodactyl's head, or the whatever this thing is, because it looks nothing like any real dinosaur that even back then had ever been described. For one thing, it's like what, 500 feet wide, wingspan. The thing is
the head
gigantic.
Is as big as the boat, pretty much.
Yeah, it's insane. Like,
the people on the boat are as big as its eye. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, none of these things, I'm going in with a killjoy was here on this one. Like, as I said, even for the time, the creatures portrayed in this story are not even close to being real dinosaurs. And for one, what are any of them doing in the middle of the ocean? They show it like a T-Rex looking one standing up out of the water. What is he standing on? How deep? They're out in the middle of the ocean. Did he find a coral reef that he happened to be walking around
Reef of No Return. They destroyed that 2 issues ago.
This is, the Reef of No Return pops up after it's been destroyed. Yeah, it did return.
Third issue in a row.
It's the Reef of Constant Return. This thing refuses to be destroyed. And this time it's bringing dinosaurs with it to defend itself. And of course, no flying dinosaur was ever as big as the one shown here. Again, I'm dumping on a lot of this story, but we'll get to commendations, and I have a bunch as well. But I'll let you lead off the commendations on this one.
Yeah, the great thing about having the originals, as we said before, is that you could see what got lifted from the reprint to make route out of the original. And the original title page for The Dinosaur That Ate Torpedoes, again, it just craps all over this time warp cover, because the cover in the reprint is the gypsy's head with this title, Time Warp, and time moves onwards, journeying ever onto new horizons, but sometimes it crosses its own path, resulting in a time warp. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. The original, get a load of this. The war has seen many kinds of battle chow, from sea rations to powdered eggs, with a grunting chorus of GI protests. But here's a brand new one for the book. What do you do about the dinosaur who ate torpedoes? Guaranteed to set your teeth on edge from an explosive string of surprises. That is so much better.
like it is a crime that they altered that text so much. Like I was talking about on the cover, how maybe they're trying to gesture towards some Stan Lee style bombast, but boom, there it is right there. Like, if that's what you want, you already published it in 1965. Just reprint it right here. That's incredible. I am so glad you have the originals of many of these stories.
And actually, looking at the very, very last panel in the story here, it's the make war no more ending as it usually is. But again, the original wraps it up so much cooler. In the original, as the Frogman is climbing up into the surviving PT boat, the bottom of the panel says, "The most sensational battles in the world are fought in the war that time forgot. Watch for the latest blockbuster thrillers in the next issue of Star Spangled War, found only in DC's red hot lineup of war comics." I'm like, I like that better too.
Yeah, holy Marvel age of comics, man. Like, that is, you expect that from like a Stan and Jack book from across the way at their at their competition. That is excellent comic book captioning right there. I love
it. Right underneath it is an ad for Captain Storm, PT boat skipper. Because Captain Storm from the Losers, he had his own book for about 23 issues, I think. So bam, right underneath it. Oh, by the way, here's another war book down here. Might want to read this one too.
Was Captain Storm the guy with the wooden leg? Or am I
Yep.
thinking of somebody else? Yeah.
Well, eventually.
Okay.
Originally, he had 2 real legs. At some point, he lost one,
Yeah.
and he became one of the losers.
Yeah.
That
I was
our fighting forces.
I was on a podcast a bit ago where we had to make a whole line of comics out of one issue of Who's Who. And I happened to guest on the episode where it was like all the captains and Captain Storm was in there. So I'm like, yeah, I think I actually remember this guy because I had to come up with a solo series for him. So that's the reason that's stuck in my mind. Now, as far as commendations for this story, for me, you got Gene Colan, an artist I grew up really being a huge fan of. And I've never seen this story before reading this issue, obviously. And I don't think I've seen Gene Colan art that's quite this early, unless I've seen reprints of his Daredevil stuff, if that was pre-1965. But I'll say that this didn't look a lot like the Gene Colan art I grew up to love for most of the story. It looked pretty rough, and I just attributed that to it being early. But first panel on the last page, you can see that style that I remember growing up loving emerging in the figure of the diver in the foreground with kind of the wispy water in front of his hands. And just right there, I'm like, there it is. There's Gene Colan. And just to be able to see some of that emerging in real time on the page was really cool for me. And you can see little glimpses of Gene's very identifiable style throughout the story. So I got a kick out of that. And I did get a kick out of how crazy and just completely made up the dinosaur stuff was. As much as I dumped on it, it was just cool to see this, like, brontosaurus looking thing with giant saw-like dagger teeth, ripping torpedoes apart and eating ships. And it was just pure insanity. And, for me, this is more of what I've expected when I saw Bob Haney's credit in an issue before and didn't get it. And instead I get it from Bob Kanigher, who I've always associated as being a much more grounded and realistic writer. So it really surprised me on many levels. So, as much as I bitched about it, I liked it.
Well, odds are pretty good. As we work our way through Weird War Tales, there'll be issues that'll have more reprints in them and stuff like that. We're probably going to find more of these War That Time Forgot stories, with the dinosaurs and stuff like that.
I think so. I think
they take them as they come. So.
I think so, because I remember the War That Time Forgot stories, but obviously I didn't grow up reading them in their original books. So DC was reprinting these things in something I was reading in the 70s and 80s. So we got that, and we're gonna leave that story behind in its time warp, munching on torpedoes, and move on to the next one, which is called The Unknown Sentinel, and I'm handing that over to you.
Okay. This is actually, this one's actually a little bit different. This was reprinted from House of Mystery 55 from October of 1956. Art by Mort Meskin. And I don't have any House of Mysteries hidden away in my archives, so I couldn't do any reprint comparisons.
Yeah, in fairness, that should be my job. I am a huge House of Mystery fan, but I've yet to start a serious attempt to collect every issue. So I should be on that. I love House of Mystery and House of Secrets, but that is not a failure of yours. That is a foible of mine that we don't have that. So I'll take it.
So the synopsis is 2 GIs, Eddie and Joe, of course, are freezing during winter maneuvers stateside. They pretty much say, screw this, and decide to desert. And pretty much as soon as they decide to desert, an avalanche sweeps them into an icy river. They pull themselves ashore, resigned to freezing to death. But what's that? A fire? Where did it come from? Who cares? They warm themselves and fall asleep, waking to discover their hands and feet have been bandaged. Who did it? Who cares? There's footsteps in the snow. Follow them. Time passes and they're about to give up, and they find a kettle of hot soup. How to get here? Who cares? Eat. Following the footsteps leads them back to their camp, and they see the ghostly form of a continental soldier. For the camp is at Valley Forge, and today is Washington's birthday.
Ooh. No, seriously, I'm kind of jealous you got this one because this was one of my favorite stories in the book. Just again, I see on the script here you don't have a Killjoy was here for this one, so
That was punched out at me. So.
I'm chomping at the bit anyway to give commendations to this one because I really enjoyed the heck out of it, and mostly because, I mean, first of all, I love how corny the story is, and all I did was sympathize with these two because I would have been just like them. First of all, saying screw this and deciding to get the hell out of there because the winter sucks. I'm all for that, especially because when we're recording this today, we just had a huge snowstorm today, and we got like between you where you live and I live around 2.5 feet of snow if you split the difference. So this is a good day to talk about this story. So first of all, I sympathize. Yeah, I sympathize with the characters. I freaking loved the art. I'm not super familiar with Mort Meskin. I know his name.
I'm not either.
I know his name, and that's all I can tell you. But right away, the opening splash panel is downright gorgeous with that scene of the frozen winterland or the frozen wilderness. And then the second panel has these two guys. They're like buried up to their noses in snow.
Yeah, they're in a foxhole.
Yeah, but all you can see is like the bridge of their noses and up. And it reminded me of the kids on the wall in Peanuts almost. Like the shift in style. This guy shows an incredible range of styles throughout just these few pages. His facial expressions all through the story are amazing. I'm definitely convinced that I need to do a much deeper dive on Mort Meskin after reading this. So he made a fan out of me with this story, and this isn't a strong candidate for my favorite pages in the book. So that's me.
Yeah, he my commendation is the second morning. After they woke up, in front of the fire, and they trudged through the snow, and they found the kettle of soup. Meskin thought far enough ahead to draw a 5 o'clock shadow on both of these guys. So, like, good attention to detail. Thumbs up. Good job. Well done. And it looks like a 5 o'clock shadow. It's not like they've been in the field for like a month or something. So it's. I think I think it's pretty convincing. I think he did a pretty good job of that.
I mean, attention to detail, flexible style, ability to draw nature scenes, facial expressions. This Mort had a heck of a toolkit for drawing comic books. So I'm down. And I don't want to gloss over who wrote it either. Like, we don't even know who wrote
it. I dug through the book. I went through a guide that I could find, trying to find a writer. Hell, maybe Meskin wrote it too. I don't know.
Yeah.
The only thing I could find was artist and editor. I could not find a writer.
I will bet you that you're right that Mort wrote and drew this because the script is so tied to the art. Like it seems to be written by someone who understands that the artist is going to convey a lot of info. You don't have a lot of heavy narrative captions in this, like explaining how the soldiers are feeling and all that. It's not. A lot of these stories, as much as I like them, are pretty purple with the caption prose and over describing things. And I love that, but it's not always necessary. So, this feels like it was written by someone who knew what they were going to be drawing and knew that they could convey that information. So yeah, it's probably Mort, like I said, this is one of these people who's on my list now of a new creator for me that I've got to become a lot more familiar with. So that takes us from the through the unknown sentinel. And again, I want you to talk about the next segment a little bit because you're someone who might have actually read some Army post office letters. So here you go.
Next up, it's called APO Weird War Tales. It's the first letter page that we see in the title, and the header is this helmeted skeleton holding an APO Weird War Tale bullet riddled envelope up close to the reader so the reader could see it. And there is probably about half a dozen letters, and all the letters are addressed to Joe Kubert, which I guess puts paid to our suspicion that this was Joe's pet project in the early going. But there's a couple of chuckles in here. There's this one guy that's talking all about I'm a recently discharged veteran. Can you tell me where I can get an Army surplus catalog that has Jeeps, field jackets, blah, 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 blah. And Joe responds, "Dear Joel, no, but I can tell you where to buy some comic books."
That freaking killed me. That's on my list, right? That's the first thing on my list too. I'm just like, that is the best response. Like, no, but I can tell you where to buy some comics. Like, hey,
Hubert definitely had some fun with this. There was another one. These guys talking about Weird War Tales #1, and he talked about well, the Fort Witch did not return, the Sea Wolf, Baker's Dozen, blah blah blah, and he ends with, "And I don't like your logo." And Hubert responds with, "Try the logo, you'll like it."
just fantastic. And again, that guy couldn't be more wrong. Like, I'm sorry, but that is the wrong opinion. Weird War Tales has one of, and I'll say it again, the best damn logos that's ever been on the cover of a comic. And it's true because I said so. Yeah. I did try the logo and I liked it. One of my other favorites is there's a guy who just writes in to tell them pretty much nothing but how they should change their comic book to make it better by listening to him. It's just a litany of here's how you can fix your comic. Just listen to me, a guy who's never written a comic in his life.
Why don't you get this guy? Why don't you get that guy? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?
Yeah, it's like fandom has never changed. It's just faster now where they can hurl their stupid, lazy opinions out on the internet instantaneously. This guy at least had to stick something in an envelope and put a stamp on it, so I'll give him that. So again, I'm very, very glad to see the first appearance of a letters page. I love letters pages. As you know, I've been skipping
reading.
I've been skipping the prose stories, the text stories or whatever, every issue, but I am going to read every single letters page. It's a thing of mine. It's one of my favorite parts of any comic that I pick up when these things still existed. So I'm psyched that they've started to appear here.
Well, I'm the same way as you. It's just like when I was reading these books for the first time, I wasn't reading the text stories. I don't read the letters pages. I don't do that to comic books I pick up off the shelf now. But because of this project and stuff like that, yes, I will read all the text stories. I will read all the letters pages, because you never know. There might be something that's funny as all hell. No, but I know where you can buy some comics. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the mailroom, man, because I have been a letters page freak since I first started reading comics. So you're going to have a blast. Some of the best content you're going to get out of some of the old books will be in the letters page. Like, there's been issues where I'm like, I didn't like any of that, but the letters page was fantastic, So, I mean, given that I had so much fun with this and, I wanted you to intro it, I still have to hand you the next story because there's no way anyone else can talk about this one. So just go ahead, man.
Okay. Next up, this is an original. It's a Prelude, USS Stevens. This is all original Sam Glanzman. Written, drawn, inked, what have you.
Lived.
Bingo. And the synopsis is, it's a boring day in the life aboard a destroyer until suddenly it's not. And yeah, it's just, these guys just doing what they're doing, BSing, playing cards, at their duty stations. And then all of a sudden, this Japanese plane comes screaming out of the clouds and the anti-aircraft guns open up. And best panel is the plane gets hit and it just barely misses the destroyer. I mean, the wreckage goes right between the ship's two stacks. And you look at this panel and it literally looks like a hot knife through butter. It is such an amazingly intense panel with the flames coming out of the planes. It smashes into the water and it just barely misses the ship. And which isn't to say that there's probably shrapnel damage from because the plane hit the water so close, stuff probably blew back on board and caused some damage. But it's a beautifully intense story. Yeah, because I know we've said this before. We Jones about Kubert, we Jones about Heath. I'm always going to Jones about Sam Glanzman. And he was a water tender, second class. He worked on the boilers and on the fires in the engine room. His autobiographical work of the USS Stevens is by far some of his best. I met him at the New York Comic Con, several years ago, and his first collection of USS Stevens stories was called All the Tin Cans. On the title page, it was called All the Tin Can Soldiers, and that pissed him off like you wouldn't believe, because you're not a soldier, you're a sailor. Someone screwed it up and it fried his bacon. And he asked me permission. Do you mind if I fix this? I'm like, do what you want. And
yeah.
And he scribbled out soldiers and wrote sailors underneath it and autographed it. And yeah, I mean, I know I'll have plenty of other opportunities to talk about Sam and just the way, some of the ways we talk to each other and everything at after this. After the panel at this con that he was at, yeah, he was a pistol, and like I said, his USS Stevens stuff is his best stuff going. It just is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've heard about the Stevens work. I've seen some of it from you. I've seen some of it online. I've never sat down and read it all. And this is really my first exposure to just reading an entire selection out of those stories. And I gotta like. I've always, especially ever since I met you, but I always, when I did see Glanzman art and some books growing up, always loved it. But now I completely venerate the guy as he deserves to be, appreciated. But this thing is 100% incredible. Just again, I talk a lot about the craft, page design. This is an incredibly swaggeringly confident piece of work. There's tons of white space on these pages. There's, panels are floating in generous white space, and it's only a few pages, and you're like, what are you doing wasting all that real estate? But then you look at the page, you read the story, you feel the pacing he's going for, because this story is almost all about waiting. It's just about how soldiers sit around on a ship waiting for something to happen.
And all of a sudden, one page, it's like,
yeah, the endless waiting for death. It's actually written into the story. That's the terminology he uses. And you wait, and then this moment passes and it's incredibly intense as you described. And then it passes and you go right back to waiting for death to come back. And it sounds trite, but the way he conveys it by using his knowledge of the mechanics of a comic book page, how it can, communicate a sense of time and pacing, you fall into a rhythm with these soldiers reading this story of going through the tick-tock swing of their day, mostly waiting around, and then it all changes when the action happens, when the attack comes, and the art, the panels themselves, they become much more chaotic and frenzied, and you're caught right up with it. It's just, it's amazingly perfect in its use of the page. And, of course, the quality of the drawings is great. But again, I feel like one thing that maybe doesn't get talked about enough with someone like this is their knowledge of the medium and their ability to use it mechanically to catch you up in the story. And man, I am 100% signed on. Like I said that, what was it? The Unknown Sentinel is a strong candidate for my favorite tale. If you discount the USS Stevens, because it's not even fair. I mean, this is just on a different level entirely. It almost feels like this story is slumming at being in any other comic book. Even though this is a good book, that the USS Stevens is coming in here doing this issue a favor. So, again, I've always been a Glanzman fan, nowhere near on your level, never met the guy, but reading just these few pages, and wasn't he involved in the pool last time around?
That was Heath.
That was Heath. Oh, okay.
But Glanzman did have, he had that thing about the aerial machine guns.
Yes. He had the battle album. Yes, the battle album. So we're on a high of some of my favorite things I've ever seen in a comic book right now. We even have that panel that Novick drew of the wingless plane. We have Mort Meskin stuff. We have this story. I'm a happy guy reading Weird War Tales right now. So being as happy as I am, all good things must come to an end. And we're going to end it with the finale of the framing sequence by Joe Kubert, and we call this one, I Know Them to Be True. Getting back into our framing sequence, the synopsis is Tony, our soldier that the gypsy woman is ministrating to, he doubts her tales, says, I don't believe any of this. Even though most of these tales, okay, so the dinosaur one's pretty unbelievable. Maybe the time warp. I guess I'm on his side, doubting her tales, but she knows them to be true. And Tony, of course, has fallen in love with her because he probably hasn't been listening to a word she's saying. He's just been checking her out this whole time. So, my opinion of Tony just keeps on sliding down, towards where I feel like he deserves what's coming. So he's in love and he begs her to stay, but she must return to another time and another battle. She will wait for him and they will meet again soon. And the band of this woman's compatriots. I'm going to keep from using the word there. They vanish into the fog, and Johnny returns with the medics to check in on Tony. And in this last awesome panel, Tony has aged into an old man as he did on the cover. So in this time when he wished it was 20 years from now, I think he aged a lot more than 20 years during his time listening to this woman's stories and his hitting on her and doubting her stories. It's like, yeah, okay, buddy. We're going to vanish into the mists of time here, and you are going to
I'm going to take about 60 years of your life with me.
Right. Yeah. We're gonna use some of your life force to enter the mists of time. Like maybe they use that to fuel their journey, but I'm going full comic book nerd on that. So, with that, we wrap into the cover without having to officially make this a behind the cover story, which have never been that good except for Joe's art. So I like that choice here to make the framing sequence into the behind the cover story, which I guess we even kind of got last time. So I'm a fan of that. So there we have our final framing sequence, and I don't see a Killjoy was here note from you.
Nothing.
So we'll jump to commendations. I'll let you talk for a second.
Well, like I said, the last awesome panel. It's about half of the last page, and it's Tony, the old man. And it's just like the cover. It's the bags under the eyes. It's the wrinkles. His hair is all white. His eyebrows are white. I mean, dude has changed. Has aged 60 years in a night. I mean, this is obviously, not the same dude that Johnny left behind to go get the medics. It's just like, what the hell did you get hit with? The Germans have some sort of aging weapon or something.
Yeah, just the weariness on that face in the end. Like you give Joe Kubert a close up.
Tired.
Yeah, just of anyone's face, and you're gonna have one of the best drawings in whatever book it is. Like just the weariness, it's incredible. And it's really just a close up of some dude's face. There's not a lot of background scenery going on, but it's a really cool panel to look at. So I'm with you on that. My favorite panel in this story is actually the second panel. It's a simple one. It's right after this woman says, "I know them to be true." And Tony says, "Come now, those were just farm tales," which that's a turn of phrase I'm not familiar with. It's probably just, fallen out of use. I feel like it was probably even old fashioned for the time, but the panel itself has two of her compatriots sitting around a kettle that they're cooking something in. She's standing. Tony is off panel, dismissing her stories. And just that drawing, again, Kubert brings a sense of a real scenario, of real living people in a panel where he didn't have to do that. You got this guy stirring the pot and a silhouette of another of his friends sitting there cross-legged waiting for whatever it is to come to boil so you can eat. And he's all in silhouette. It's just it's an incredibly good panel with a good use of lighting, and shows that while this whole thing's going on, this drama between the woman and Tony, the rest of the camp is just getting on with its business. And I love details like that. Like it just makes it into an entire scene rather than just a bunch of talking heads. And that's the Kubert difference. That's a real comic book craftsman's difference, and that's what stood out to me. So that's the end of the framing sequence. It's not technically the end of the issue, and I'm gonna make you describe what comes after it.
Well, we go back to 4 more one-panel John Costanza yucks in Military Madness.
Woo-hoo!
And yep, and it's it's the same wannabe military horror monster something or other stuff going on. I like one of them. There's one, there's 2 MPs, that are on duty. One staring at the moon with little heart-shaped images coming off of his head as he stares at the moon. The MP behind him is all, he's turning into a werewolf.
Yeah, he's that guy who's been bitten in the zombie movie but pulls down his sleeve, but this is a werewolf bite. It's like I kind of like that one too, I guess.
You're that guy. Yeah, so that was my favorite of the 4.
I'll say the one after that in the bottom right gave me a little bit of a Gru the Wanderer vibe, which gave it a lot of bonus points for me. You've got 2 soldiers in the background digging ditches or something. They're digging holes. Maybe why they'd be doing this. I don't, but
foxhole or something like
that. I guess
they're on maneuvers. They're doing whatever the hell it is they're told to do. Roussos.
And the guy in the foreground has a pickaxe and is about to swing at his patch of dirt, except his patch of dirt is actually the mound of a big globular green monster that is starting to look up at him and wake up. And it reminds me of like these Gru the Wanderer by the amazing Sergio Aragonis, images where he'd have Gru about to attack what looks like a snake in the grass, but you can see that it's the tail of an immense dragon behind him in the weeds. So it doesn't really deserve the bonus points, but since it made me think of Gru, I grabbed onto it to save me from the military madness. Again, I like the guy in the middle. I like the little Sergeant Stone mascot. I wish he was more a part of these because there's some actual fun character design there, and he just doesn't appear in the actual jokes.
Maybe in a future episode it'll be like a 4-panel story, and he'll be like the drill sergeant yelling at him or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so, because Costanza's a good artist. He's a good, but I just think someone else needs to write the gags, and I think Sergeant Stone needs to be a character. But, okay, so we finished off Military Madness, and we can get to the part where we talk about our favorite advertisements in this issue. And I'm going to let you lead again.
Well, it can be hard sometimes. You flip through these things and you just try to find the ad that either hurts the most or makes you laugh the loudest. And the one that I settled with was about halfway through the ghost ship stories, and it's a blonde guy, and he's got sideburns, a mustache, and a little goatee action going on. And just the caption for this thing just kills me. It's like, look impressive anytime, enjoy an exciting, romantic, quick change to suit your mood time. Send for mustache, sideburns, and Van Dyke at once. Simply check the color you want or send a sample of your hair and leave the matching to our expert.
They are definitely building voodoo dolls on people. People are sending in hair and they are using them for supernatural or sinister purposes. That's my
all three, $6. Adhere securely, off and on in seconds. Can be worn as is or trimmed to just the style you want. Masculiner Company, Department 741, East Orange, New Jersey.
Just the name of the company and everything. I must have seen this ad 1,000 times, but for some reason I completely missed it in this issue until I saw that you had written it in the notes for this episode. And then I went paging back through the issue and went, oh my God, there it is.
Like, Van Dyke.
Just stick on beards, stick on facial hair.
Stick on sideburns. I mean, good.
Yeah. You can order through the mail.
Send us a sample of your hair. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, they're like cloning you. They're making a voodoo doll. Something is up with that. I'm sure like Jordan Peele could make a horror movie about what's behind them wanting a sample of your hair, really. But again, just an awesome find for you to pull that out, because I had missed it, and I know I've seen that ad when I was growing up. And just the mystery behind these things. Like, I'd love to have known somebody who ordered this stuff. I mean, we should go looking online to see if anyone's ever documented that they ordered this crap and what could it have possibly looked like.
Get a toupee for your chin.
Hell yeah. This is face toupees, man. There's a market and they're trying to fill that need. So,
oh, the 70s.
Yeah, the very early 70s, man. Like, so I had to pick this one ad, because it's an absolute classic. I'm really glad you found Masculiner, because I love having the more obscure, crazier ad. But in this issue, and it's probably in a ton more issues, so we'll mention it the one time, is the infamous, the famous, the incredibly well-known Charles Atlas ad. Now, this is the version of his ad that's titled "The Insult That Made a Man Out of Mac." This is the hero of the beach. This is where Grant Morrison stole Flex Mentallo from, for my more modern Doom Patrol fans. This is the guy that's on, he's at the beach with his girlfriend and a bully kicks sand in his face, and she's like, oh, don't worry about it, like obviously not impressed with him. And he goes home and has a fit, and he orders Charles Atlas book, and he comes back to the beach all buff and just punches that guy right in the face because, you know, that's good wholesome activity. That's how you do self-improvement. If you're a Charles Atlas man, is you punch a guy right in the face on first sight. So, you know, you have that lovely moralistic tale. And so this is the appearance of this incredibly just, you know, this ad was in so many comic books. It was like standard issue. You could hardly avoid the thing. One of my favorite parts of the ad is the, you know, the tagline where they're trying to appeal to the potential customer and they say, sick and tired of being soft, frail, skinny, or flabby, only half alive. Like, yeah, all right, hey, take it easy, man. All right. These people feel bad enough about themselves as it is. You know, at 10 cents for a 32-page How Dynamic Tension Makes You a New Man booklet. So I'm thinking 10 cents, what were they really selling? So I dug into it a little bit. And of course, it's one of those, the first hit is free or extremely cheap. And then he's upselling you for a whole series of other books that likely cost a lot more than that. And he made a ton of money off this program. So good on him. You know, he knew what he was doing. You know, it's like there's 12 lessons after that, as I found out, and then one final perpetual lesson. You know, so there's like 11 or 12 more books after that first one you send away for. So he had a good racket going here, and just a classic ad in a comic that's in comic book form. That story of Mac being bullied on the beach is done as comic book panels, and this ad had many different titles before the one we see here, which is the one I grew up with, The Insult That Made a Man Out of Mac. It had, you know, I forget what they were, but this ad was around a lot longer than I thought it was when I looked into it. So that gets the ad pick for me. But honestly, the Masculiner Company ad is the best ad in this book. I mean, I'm so glad you stumbled across that and picked it out, because that's the one that I come away wanting to do even more research on.
Well, I need to go throw my own 2 bits on that in the Charles Atlas ad. Is they got the live photo of him. He's wearing like a leopard skin brief or something like that. It says Charles Atlas awarded the title of the world's most perfectly developed man. I'm like, oh boy. And again, lousy ad placement. You know, they have cut out the coupon and set it in. Well, the coupon is on the back side of the front of the cover. So I don't want to cut up my cover. And you look at the very, very bottom of the coupon that they want you to cut out. It says, in England, Charles Atlas, 21 Poland Street, London, W1. I'm like, oh, so there's a English Charles Atlas location. Okay, cheerio, pip pip. Good for you.
Hey, he's the world's most perfectly developed man. He's worldwide, man. He is all over the place. He is international.
The sun never sets on Charles Atlas.
No, exactly. He is everywhere. He is all things. He really is Flex Mentallo. And again, if you don't know who that is, people, go read some Doom Patrol comics. Go watch the Doom Patrol series on HBO Max. And I'm getting no money for mentioning that. But basically, Grant Morrison ripped this off and turned him into a character in the Doom Patrol and got DC Comics into a bit of trouble for a while because he didn't run it by anybody. And they eventually reached an understanding with Atlas's company or estate or whatever, and DC is allowed to use the character again. But Morrison did a lot of that, just taking stuff without asking. It's one of the things I like about him. So again, it's an ad that reminds me of other things I love today, just like that one panel in Military Madness reminded me of Gru, which is my favorite comic book of all time. And that's a good note to end this episode on. I'm telling you, I had a bumpy ride with that first story, and really wasn't sure how much I was going to enjoy the rest of the issue. But come to the end of it, this again was one of my favorite comics I've read ever. I mean, you have the Unknown Sentinel, which had me discover Mort Meskin. You have the USS Stevens. The first letters page. This is just, we're on an upward journey here, so I'm very happy with it. What do you think, man? Like, how this compares to the first 3 issues?
Well, I think we're starting to settle into a groove and everything else. I mean, like I said, huge Glanzman fan, met the man, been to his grave, everything else. I've got the collection, the complete collected works of the USS Stevens, you know, hardbound and everything else like that. And so if you ever want to borrow it, be my guest. It's a hell of a read. It's all the 2-page, 6-page, whatever stories that were scattered in all the DC War books.
I think I'm just going to order myself a copy at this point, because I am such a deep convert at this point that I need my own copy of that. So that's going to happen. So
I think I think we're definitely on an upward swing here. I think we're only have about another two episodes, I think, of mostly reprinted books.
Yeah, I think the reprints go through issue 7. I'm not sure what density they are. Maybe by issue 7 there's almost no reprints in it, but I remember in the write-up when I was looking into the history of this book that the first 7 issues had a lot of reprinted material. But we'll find out. We're only 3 away from that.
2 is that 2?
No, we're in the 4th issue. This is the 4th spine-tingling issue.
Well, yeah, sometimes I get confused with you because we started with episode 0, right? So.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to the 5th chin. We'll get to the 5th chin tickling issue next, or whatever it's gonna be. The 5th wet willying issue of Weird War Tales. And on that note, I'll say we'll see you next time. And until then, make war
no more.